What a pleasure it is to welcome Fedgroup to What's Next, and Warren Winchester joins us. He's the General Manager for Ventures at Fedgroup. And for those of you who don't know about Fedgroup, they're a diversified financial services group that offer a range of financial products across investments, long-term insurance, lending and fiduciary services, augmented with complementary non-financial products and services that add greater value to their clients and their partners. And we're going to be talking today about providing easier access to the necessary funding that can help address the key issues of food security and energy security. So, great pleasure it is to welcome you to the show, and really good to see you, Warren. Fantastic to see you, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. You got an interesting title there, GM of Ventures at Fedgroup. What does the GM of Ventures at Fedgroup do?
Yeah, thanks, Aki, and pleasure to speak to you. Yeah, so within Fedgroup, we have various areas within the business. So Ventures essentially handles that part of the business where we look at our impact investing side. So looking at more around alternative investments, as well as providing funding mainly in the agricultural space, as well as the green energy space.
Okay, so do set the scene for us then. I mean, we're going to be talking about food security, and this is a big topic globally. When you talk about the world, and you look at the World Economic Forum, they talk about these two issues that we're going to be talking about: food security and energy security. And we know what's been happening in the war in the Ukraine at the moment, and the shortages and the energy crisis that not only affects us in South Africa but many countries around the world. So please set the scene for us. Some of the issues around sustainability and impact investing are global issues, as I just mentioned. And in South Africa, issues such as energy and food security are daily challenges. I mean, we see this all the time. Why is Fedgroup and FSP concerned about sustainability?
No, for sure, Aki. And like you mentioned, sustainability is a global trend at the moment. And at Fedgroup, we firmly believe that being able to be involved in sustainability is a key element that each individual needs to be a part of. So not just within the private sector, within the financial services sector, but every individual has a part to play. Now, if we're looking at ESG around the globe, there's been quite a few negative connotations around it. Companies utilizing that framework to rather do less good than do actual good. So within Fedgroup, around a decade ago, we made a conscious decision to be able to go a step further than ESG and really look at impact investing. So looking at two of the key global issues currently facing the world, being food security, energy security, and sustainability as a whole. So job creation, but also management of scarce resources and everything else that goes along with that. What we did find that through our decade of being involved in this is that you can be involved in sustainability and still have a way of making it generate returns for you. So being able to create jobs, be able to manage scarce resources like water, and ensure food security that you're contributing towards it, you're actually able to generate returns that buck the trend in terms of ESG type investments, whereby you normally foregoing a portion of your profit to be able to do good. So luckily, through our hard work and the learnings over the last decade, we found a way of incorporating these principles into the way we do business, our models around these businesses, as well as our interactions with the partners, that we are actually able to drive better returns. And that's driving better returns, not only for Fedgroup and our investors, but for our partners and for the farmers and the various landlords that we're involved in at the same time. So we're constantly proving the fact that by being sustainable in your approach and ticking the boxes in terms of the impact investing, we're able to attract more people to it because we're offering better returns in those areas.
Okay, well, that makes perfect sense. When you look at energy and food security, and it's clearly very important, as you've touched on it as well, surely farmers shouldn't have challenges getting access to capital. Yet every day you find that's a big challenge for farmers. I mean, why is that in the world? We should be making capital accessible easy for farmers, but yet it's challenging.
No, definitely. And I think historically there's been a perception, especially in the market, of funders into these various areas, that it's a very risky area to be involved in. And, each sector within agriculture is nuanced to a degree in that, they might face different risks. The global markets a bit might behave differently if you're looking at something like pistachios versus something like moringa. So it is quite nuanced, and being able to actually understand the intricacies around each of these projects and the sectors is quite key to be able to unlock funding in those areas. So I think historically, if you're following just an algorithm-based approach whereby you input financial data into a system and it's going to give you a yes or no based on basic credit parameters, it's going to be very difficult for a farmer to get funding from the normal channels. Agriculture follows very different cash flow cycles, very different revenue generating capability cycles. So you've got to be able to match your funding quite closely to the actual operation on the ground. So if you look at something like macadamias, it might take 6 years to bear any nuts, and only thereafter does it reach full yield potential. So being able to match the funding and that goes into that business before they start generating cash flows is quite key. So it's really a long-term approach, especially when you're looking at some of the sectors within agriculture that normal funding channels don't cater for. A lot of the time they're looking for like a 3 to 5 year investment or return or funding, whereas within we take the long-term view, and we really partner with our partners for the long term, because we see the unlock of value after 5 years, after 8 years, after 10 years. So being able to match that very closely to the needs of the farmer, so that you're ensuring that they remain a going concern, that you can drive their yields, drive their profitability, is very key to being able to get funding into their world. That makes sense in a financial sense, that we can drive returns for us and for investors as well as for the farmers.
No, it's so interesting. And I mean, macadamia nuts is one thing that absolutely fascinates me. And I know you guys are involved on that side as well, and blueberries and all sorts of other crops as well. And I was astonished to learn that, we're the world's biggest exporter of macadamia nuts. And, they're in demand. And as you correctly say, so many farmers are switching to those crops. And even though it takes 6 years, but the profits that they yield from year 6 onwards are quite extraordinary, and it's fascinating to watch those industries and something like macadamia nuts. Who would have thought? So, what is the process that you employ to identify who the best partners are and where the biggest opportunities lie? Because surely you're not just providing finance to anyone with a farm.
Yes, definitely, Aki, and I think we touched on a key driver there. Is we look for the industries that are high value crops. So the demand is outstripping supply, and that's really to be able to hit the financial metrics, to be able to offer the funding that we give to farmers as investments to retail investors or institutional investors. So there's always 3 driving principles that we assess when having a look at a farm and doing our deep dive due diligence. And, colloquially within Fedgroup, it's known as our 3 Ps. So the first element that we'll assess is people. So one of our core driving principles within Fedgroup is people first. So we have a look at how involved are the farmers in terms of uplifting the community around these farms. How do they treat their employees? Is there additional employee benefits? How do we unlock the value for the people that are around these farms and that work within those farms? And through our various skills and offerings within Fedgroup, we then assess how much value can we unlock for these farmers. Being able to bring a percentage of profits off these farms into infrastructure development for the communities, being able to employ more people from the local communities to help uplift communities. These are all core drivers when we're looking at the people element. Then the second element is planet. So we know this planet is the only one we have. And with such focus being on climate change at the moment, we have to look at how do we mitigate against it? How do we do our part to reduce our carbon emissions, to be able to become net zero for these operations that we're involved in? And we do that through various mechanisms. So, a lot of the time we're dealing with very professional, competent farmers who have a proven track record in the sector that they operate in. And they already have a proof of concept in terms of, let's follow through on the macadamia example, that they have some orchards already producing so that we can analyze their performance against industry norms, against global sector norms, but also assess the climatic conditions of the area that they want to expand into. How much reliance do they put on pesticides and chemicals, and how do they treat the earth around it? So are they following more regenerative farming practices? Do they try add more organic matter into their soil? How do they manage the water? And then we look at, through our ability to bring technology onto the farm through one of our various sister companies, meters to be able to control how much water is being used, how much fertilizer is being used. But at the same time, bringing experts such as agronomists to say, well, how do we improve on the soil microbiome to be able to have to rely less on fertilizers? How do we increase biodiversity on these farms to be able to drive the ability to sustain drought or flooding? These are all elements that we bring in onto the funding model that we get involved with these farmers on, to be able to drive less reliance on these inputs, thereby reducing the cost of those inputs, but also then bringing additional revenue streams onto their farms. So, Aki, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're involved in a queen honeybee breeding project.
Yes.
So we're able to, in a laboratory, breed a queen and create swarms. So we forever increasing our swarms under management. So being able to then bring these swarms onto the farms, so that then the farmer doesn't have to pay for pollination services. They get honey as an additional revenue stream onto their farm. But even just driving the biodiversity of having permanent bees on the farm and having those bees working on those flowers of those nuts for 12 weeks instead of just hiring them in for 4 weeks is a key driver to improving profitability, increasing yield, increasing the quality of the produce, and bringing additional revenue streams on. Are we able to bring one of our solar systems and try to take the farm off grid, or at least reduce the cost of electricity? These are all parts and parcel of what we bring as part of our cost of our funding, as part of our funding offering, and as part of our partnership model that we have with these farms. So we never just bring in access to capital to these farmers. We bring access to a whole suite of experts that are able to help unlock value. We bring in a suite of sister companies such as an EPC that will design a solar system and project management and then maintain it after we've set it up. All of these are elements that we bring in together as part of the funding to say, will it tick the boxes? Then we do a lot of stress testing their results against the forward-looking financial models that we build out. And we're building sensitivities so that we say, if there is a total crop failure or if there is a flood or a drought, what returns can these farms still generate? So we're always prudent in our approach in saying that at a worst case scenario, does it still tick the boxes of being able to generate the third principle, which is profits? So being able to say, is it already a going concern? Are they generating profits? And how much can we improve that profitability so that we can share in that increasing profits on the farm through scaling and access to various skills and technology, and thereby help generate those returns for our investors by being directly linked to the increasing profitability on these projects.
That's amazing. I mean, really optimizing the entire process.
100%. So we've realized that, being as deeply vertically integrated into these projects is key to be able to help them unlock value. So if we know that a pack house for those macadamias in an area might not be able to handle an additional 1,000 hectares of macadamias, we'll work together with them in being able to then fund an additional pack house, taking that pack house off the grid, being able to make use of biogas to drive energy generation. All of these are elements that we're looking to get involved in around our chosen sectors so that we help the sector grow, we help add to the GDP of the country, but also help with the infrastructure to be able to handle any increase in production that goes on.
So we've spoken about agriculture,
Yeah.
and it's an incredible process when you get technology involved and technology starts streamlining the process. And you mentioned IoT and energy solutions, and agriculture is fascinating. But you're also involved in the green energy space, and we know how big green energy is at the moment. Please tell us about your involvement there and the green energy space, because it's really becoming a huge investment globally.
No, definitely. We need to be able to alleviate the stress that's been put on our grid, mainly through production capabilities, but also being able to de-risk businesses in terms of energy reliance on the grid, battery backup systems so that they can keep trading or generating power when the grid is down. So being able to put a solar system is the first win. In terms of the radiance levels in South Africa, we have some of the best sunshine around the world. So essentially, we almost see it as a part of agriculture because we farm in the sun. So being able to know that we're able to then generate electricity for the various businesses that we're involved in, and be that commercial, industrial rooftops, but also looking at energy for the farmers. Their businesses are heavily reliant on electricity usage. So they go very hand in hand with being able to generate returns, being able to lower the input costs. So, we saw the value in being able to bring an alternative energy source to the market. And because of that, we bought our own EPC solar company. So they're able to now bring engineering design of these various systems, as well as the financial modeling. So, being able to link to 30 years worth of weather data so that we can accurately forecast how many sunlight hours we'll have, being able to measure the peaks of usage of the power so that we can match the size of the system very closely to be able to drive the returns for the landlords, but also drive the returns of the funding of those sites into our world. So a lot of work goes into being able to get the right system on the right rooftop and in the right area, but also being able to be diversified. So if you look at something like our solar fund, being able to have sites spread out all across, it follows the same methodology as our agricultural fund, whereby we're involved in multiple sectors within agriculture, so that we know if one is doing really well, there might be one that's slightly underperforming, but on a portfolio level, we're still generating great returns because of that diversification in it. So, power being such a key part of every person's life and of every business, it was definitely an area that we spotted opportunity and that we had to fill to be able to generate returns.
Gee, it's interesting. I've been watching that part of your business as well. Absolutely fascinating. Now, in addition to providing funding across all these projects that you spoke about, tell us a little bit more about how you add value to, improving the returns and sustainability of the projects. I mean, you touched on looking at the weather patterns 30 years ahead. I mean, there you're getting some sort of predictability on what your return is going to be like. But I'm sure there are lots and lots of other interesting factors that you look at.
Yes, definitely. So, and really, I think we have to make some assumptions and really looking at it like a worst case scenario. So if you look at even just El Nino and El Nina, some of the weather patterns that are taking place and how they are drastically changing to what the norm has been, being able to almost preempt one of these risks and being able to say, well, how do we look at building a dam on the projects that we're involved in so that we can secure water for up to 3 years for that farmer, being able to look at a reduction in some of the chemical usage through looking after the soil where the crops are being grown. These are all elements that and assumptions that we bring to the party through a use of various network of experts to be able to say, well, this is going to, first of all, mitigate any risk against these projects to a certain degree, but also help drive those yields, help drive the quality of any projects that's coming off these farms, the ability to generate your own electricity. These are all elements that we bring into every project that we're involved in, because we know they're going to be critical elements in terms of protect capital that's been deployed there, but also driving those returns that we can then offer to our investors. So we're constantly assessing what's out there in the market, constantly on top of new technological advances, so that we can really be the early adopters in terms of being able to bring technology into the hands of our partners and help drive returns throughout the sectors that we're involved in.
Very interesting. When you look at Fedgroup, and you've spoken about all of these things that you guys invest in and optimize and yielding great returns, what is the benefit to Fedgroup of being involved in these sustainable projects? And I imagine there's so many different factors. I'm just thinking about the good that you're doing to the planet for one. But at the end of the day, it's about the money that counts, right? And the returns to your investors.
Most definitely, Aki. And yes, it does really feel good, At a click of a button through our central system that runs everything within Fedgroup, I can tell you how many light bulbs have been powered through our solar energy, how many liters of water have we saved, how many job hours have we created, how many bees are we housing within our beehives. These are all critical elements that really make you feel good, first of all, but at the same time, make it a tangible, measurable metric that you can report on. So being able to report these metrics is a key driver to being able to attract capital and being able to tick the boxes, especially when you're linking them towards something like the 17 sustainable goals of the UN or, an ESG framework. They really become very powerful. But at the same time, being able to generate increased returns through utilizing those principles is also a key driver. So being able to, first of all, attract capital because of the metrics that and the principles that we base our investment decisions on. And secondly, being able to generate market-leading returns from these assets. So they go hand in hand. And more and more, we find investors actually caring what is their investment doing. They want to be able to have a report that says your investment has ticked these boxes by creating so many job hours or powering so many light bulbs. So there's definitely a feel-good element, but being able to look at the track record of the actual returns that these investments are generating is one of the key drivers. So not only for Fedgroup, but really being able to drive a simplistic approach for an investor to get involved. So sure, there's a lot that goes on in the background, a lot of work, a lot of asset management to ensure that those metrics are met. But we really try to simplify the ability to invest in them for an investor. So having a look at something like our impact farming platform, whereby a retail investor can get the returns from a single asset, all the way up to something like our endowment investment, where it's investing into those underlying funds and generating returns like that, are all quite simple investment mechanisms for the investment landscape.
So, I mean, when you talk about benefits for your investors, what about what are the benefits for investors who are not your farming partners, for example? Do they also benefit from this?
Yes, definitely. So the way that we've modeled the investments for, let's say, like the retail investor, somebody who's not a partner, they are earning returns that are linked directly to real assets on the ground. So they are delinked from market sentiment. So if interest rates are raised by the Fed, there's no impact. Your tree's still going to be producing nuts. The sun's still going to be shining and earning returns in terms of electricity usage. So a very key element of driving value for the investments is delinking it from market sentiment. Having it counter-cyclical in nature, so quite a key element. So we know that inflationary pressure, even if you just look at inflation in food, so there's large pressures in terms of inflation in those areas, but that leads once again to the returns increasing for the investors into these projects, because a lot of the time it tracks inflation and is almost like a national inflation. If you look at a lot of the produce coming off our farms, like you mentioned around macadamias, we're the largest exporter in the world. So around 90% of the projects that we're involved in the agricultural space, that produce is exported. So there's a natural inflation hedge built into your underlying investment. So we all know what the rand is doing. It's extremely volatile. But being able to sell the produce in a hard currency offshore allows you to hedge against inflation. So that is also passed on to the investors. And then also the investors' returns being linked to the performance of the assets is also great. So we know that we're bringing technology, models, and ways of doing business that is going to increase the profitability. And that increase in profitability is also passed on to the investors because their returns are directly linked to the performance of those underlying assets. So, historically at Fedgroup, we have over a 30-year track record with one of our main focuses being commercial property finance. So having real assets and being involved with tangible assets is in our blood. And we always going to drive that tangibility of investors knowing exactly what type of assets are generating their returns.
That's amazing. I mean, when you look at the launch of your impact farming, and it's been several years now, how have these investments been performing? Are you getting a good return on these investments?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing to keep in mind is we've started investing into these sectors around 10 years ago, and we only started releasing impact farming around 7 years ago. So, we funded everything off our own balance sheet. We got our models really fine-tuned, and we learned the lessons in terms of how to mitigate the risks. And we constantly able to measure the metrics coming off those farms. So we are able to then track the models that we built against actual performance. We're able to constantly tweak the farming methodologies in collaboration with our partners to be able to drive constant yields. And so far to date, 80% of the investments that we've made are exceeding the models that we've built out and actually going to earn more than our forecasted returns. So we're really happy in terms of our approach to being able to offer these investments to the markets. And a lot of the time there's macroeconomic as well as microeconomic factors that are influencing the ability to generate returns. But because of our prudent approach in terms of developing those financial models, we're able to either mitigate against it, or we've already taken it into consideration in terms of the underlying operations that are in place. So, we're constantly looking for new sectors to get involved in, as well as those more established sectors within the country, whereby we know we're able to generate returns for investors. And to date, like I mentioned, around 80% of our investments are exceeding our models.
Oh, that's great. That's amazing stuff. You've spoken a lot about sustainability and how it should be done, and it sounds like you guys have got it really scientifically on paper, and it seems to be working. How do you know that you're actually making a positive impact that you're talking about? You can obviously measure it, and
Yep.
Are those measurements correlating with global trends of really making a difference?
Yes, definitely, Aki. And because of our technology in the background and our system that everything feeds into, as an impact farming investor, you can actually see your single asset, the impact that it's made. We can drill down into a project and see the impact that project has made, or we can look at a full portfolio of everything that we've been involved in and what difference have we made. So really being able to be proactive and say we're approaching an investment to actually do good instead of do less bad, really bucks the trend around the global landscape of what's going on with ESG investing or impact investing. So being able to have those metrics measured and reported on is a great way of achieving sustainability goals that we set out for ourselves. And we've really seen that through our methodology and our principles that we're able to actually do better than what the majority of people are doing out there because of our approach to it and our use of technology.
Absolutely fascinating. I love the stuff that you guys are doing at Fedgroup. Warren Winchester, General Manager for Ventures at Fedgroup. Thank you for joining us on this episode of What's Next.
Thanks so much, Aki, and keep well.